Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Story Driven podcast. Today we are here in Yonder Cafe. It's a full cafe right now, and so I'm recording the intro to this podcast, enjoying my matcha and a, what was it? It was a churro croissant, and it's fire. So yeah, when I first moved here to Northridge, Yonder became my third place, which is the place outside of work and home to go and find community gathering, to find a place to get out and escape and, have new experiences. And, shortly from visiting this place, I ended up meeting the owner, Belle, and her team, Maddie, Julian, Teresa, and the rest. And they really have curated a very special place here. And so I invited Belle to be on the podcast, and she accepted. So her interview, I feel, is going to be valuable for anyone who is an aspiring entrepreneur. Belle never expected to be an entrepreneur. She actually had a job that she loved, and through just a turn of events in her life, she ended up backpacking and going and traveling. And through her travels, realized that she wanted to, start her own business. Now, Yonder's been in business for a few years, and it's really, I think, a special place. So I was super stoked to have her on the podcast. I can't wait for you to get to meet her. And yeah, I really think that this is an invaluable interview for anyone who's an aspiring entrepreneur, or for those who are interested. Maybe even though you thought that it may not be for you, I think this interview could potentially change your mind. Belle didn't have any formal business training. She created this brand just purely out of intuition. I would call her a brand story natural. She crushed it, and she created a brand that has attracted a very awesome community. Everyone I meet here tend to be really awesome human beings. So without further ado, here is Story Driven Podcast, episode 6.
Cheers.
Are we rolling? Cheers. Here we are at Yonder Coffee. So this spot was like a treasure. We ended up moving to Northridge, and this spot became my third place.
Nice.
I don't know if you know
Very
what
cool.
the concept of the third place is.
I have heard of it.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
I heard of it recently.
Yeah.
And this really is the more I've come here has become my spot to just chill out, meet really cool people.
Awesome.
There's a really cool community you guys have here. So I'm
You're
excited.
part of the community now.
Yeah, no, it's really just everything that you've curated here is just that. It feels very intentionally curated to bring a specific type of vibe, a community. And so I feel like everyone I've met here has always just been really good company.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we want.
Yeah, and so I was super stoked when you agreed to be on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And I think just to jump right in,
Yeah, for sure.
I'd love to just ask you, what do you love about running Yonder?
Lots to love, right? I think you basically said it. What I love doing here at Yonder is one, really just connecting with people. We always have this thing, at least this year, is kind of like two words that I'm kind of honing ourselves into as a team, is quality and hospitality. And part of it is bringing hospitality where it needs to be, and yes, we may just be a coffee shop, but we don't want to just have it as a transactional thing with people. We want to go beyond, over yonder, the cup of coffee that people buy. So really, that's the best part about having the coffee shop, is having relationships, people that we now know and people that we have built relationships over the past 3 years. It's pretty amazing, how much we've come from not knowing people to having relationships with people where we actually hang out with them and literally live life with them. So, yeah. That's the best part of it.
Oh, yeah. I guess, I'm curious, like, because I'm sure I'm sure having a physical location, as an entrepreneur myself, I just like having all of this, all of these systems and things to like, to take care of.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is like, what are the challenges maybe of running an actual coffee shop? And,
Oh my gosh, I could probably write a whole page or more of challenges. I mean, one, when we first came in here, there were already some equipment that, not necessarily what we have, we completely changed some of the things here, but as far as like sinks, and things like that, like they were already pre-installed, and we kind of came in and bought in with those things here.
That's nice.
So being that we are a second generation cafe to this, gave us a lot more room to think of other things rather than the basic stuff. So the upkeep is definitely a lot of work, when it comes to machines. Like we have, it's like a car, you got to get your oil change, you got to get all that stuff. And if something's leaking, you better go get it checked, and things break, they don't last forever. So some of the things you constantly have to change, you constantly have to get repaired. But if there's anything that's like people don't tell you about, when it comes to running businesses, and, at least what we have here is just the day-to-day, like knowing that like this machine is inevitably going to break, or something's it's not gonna pull right, like you have to know all of that. But what I learned is that you don't have to know it all to start.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I think that's the beauty of just going for it, but at the same time, it is challenging when you have less of a knowledge and or not having people to support you in that. So I think having the support is 100% like super valuable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd say, you've been at this now, what, 3 years?
3
We
years,
just had
yeah.
the 3-year anniversary party that we
Yeah,
attended. And
yes,
it
that was fun.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
Live jazz, and the band that you guys had here was incredible as well.
They're great.
And like, it gets me thinking, like to get to this point, there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot, and I'm curious, like where it all started. Like, did you always know that you wanted to have a coffee shop? Or to be an entrepreneur even? Like,
I didn't know I was going to be an entrepreneur, to be honest. But I think now that I think about that, I think I have like an entrepreneurial spirit. Like I kind of run my life that way, where I like to start things. I've been a part of many pilot programs for any and everything, from like education to people like literally launching something and I want to be part of it. So a lot of like startup things, I've been a part of over the years, but not really to the point of like owning my own business. I didn't think that was gonna happen. I've always been like just helping other companies, or I've been a nonprofit for a long time. I ran our youth group like for years, so it's kind of like I've been always having this like leadership type role, but not to a degree that I'm owning my own shop. But I did want to have my own juice bar back in high school.
Okay. So
because,
that's where it kind of
yeah,
started.
it kind of like, I'm like, this is so cool, live band, and, kids get to come because it was non-alcoholic, obviously, but, and I was only in high school. So my cousins would play in the band, and we would come and stay till like past midnight, and there's no alcohol because they were kids, but I just liked the idea of it. There was a place, the third place that people were going to, and so I liked that. It was buried, for a long time, and I went to school and went to college, and that's the first time I started drinking coffee, was in college.
Same,
I drank,
actually.
Sorry?
Same, yeah. I didn't really
Yeah.
drink coffee in high school either.
Yeah, I mean, I know of coffee, but I always thought about it as like my uncle drank like 10 cups a day just 'cause to stay up, trying to do something. But other than that, like I never drank coffee. I don't have any like preferred beverages or anything like that either, but in college, I needed to stay up. So I tried from, those French vanilla vending machines, 7-Eleven, to like, and then it ended up with Pete's Coffee, where that's where I kind of started the specialty coffee, I would say, journey, where I was starting to find good coffee back in college. And I just stuck there. Specialty coffee was still very, very new, at least in the United States. And it was something that, pour overs and all that stuff, they were barely coming into the picture. And so after college, I was just kind of getting into it more. And then eventually I bought my own supplies and, bought myself a Chemex. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those hourglass looking coffee pour over. Yeah. So it was invented by a chemist. And so he used it for his own coffee. Yeah.
I think I did.
Yeah.
I do remember a scene in Breaking Bad.
Yes, they must have used. Yeah,
where a character
yeah.
is using.
They
one
have
of
it in
those
Interstellar. If you saw the movie, they
yeah.
used it there too.
That's sick.
But
so you started chemically, is that it? It's like a
well,
chemistry.
no,
type
not
of...
so much. It was just I was interested in pouring my own cup of coffee that's good. So obviously from there, it piqued my interest, and I would read about it. Back then YouTube wasn't as big as it is now, but I would just mostly read blogs and all that stuff, early, maybe 2000, I don't know, 8, 9, 10, somewhere there. And I would just read about it, find recipes online, where are people roasting their beans? What are these, what's good, what's not good. So I just started doing that. And then this was back in, gosh, I don't even remember. It was maybe 2012, and then my friend bought me a little Mr. Coffee espresso machine, and I would make coffee at home and have people, just whoever in the family, and I would make them coffee and stuff, and it was fun. It was fun for me, and we even made a joke out of it that this is Belle Espresso, because it's my name's Belle. So they created something of it. Then I started an Instagram. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just make an Instagram account called Belle Espresso. So the Yonder Coffee account we have now actually was Belle Espresso.
Oh,
so if you scroll all the way down, if you scroll all the way down, you'll see maybe we deleted it. I don't even know. They were so unprofessional. It was just whatever we have. But from there, my aunt wanted to have a birthday party. And she was just like, hey, you want to make coffee for my birthday? And I'm like, that sounds cool. I'll set up my little thing. And so that's kind of where the coffee cart idea entered.
Wow. And this must have been before, coffee carts were really as but now it's a thing.
For sure.
But this is back.
Definitely. I didn't have a cart. It was just a table.
Yeah.
It was just a 6-foot table, and I just cover it up and had my grinder. It's cool because you're pouring and people are watching you and stuff like that. So the aesthetic was nice because you're doing a manual brewing, in front of people, and they're waiting for their coffee. They could smell the coffee and they could see the process of it, how there's a science to it, the weight, the grams, whatever, right? They saw all of that.
Appreciate the value and the taste.
Exactly. It took 6 minutes just to make a cup of coffee, but still they were in the process with us.
Awesome.
So from there, my aunt basically asked if I could do that for her, and the idea came to mind where I said, I can do this. I can do something like this. And one of the reasons, a year before that, or maybe a couple of months before that, I was already thinking of quitting my job to start a coffee shop. And clearly it wasn't right timing. But now, looking back,
I'm curious.
Yeah.
What was your job before this?
I worked in a nonprofit.
Oh, nice.
So I worked admin. I did pretty much every single position I could fill in that job. So,
but mostly administrative.
Administrative, a lot of administrative. We were doing publication stuff, and we would, education.
Did you like it?
And stuff I loved it. Until now, kind of funny because they asked me to be part of their board. So now I'm still in there, but as a board member.
Nice.
So I came from booking hotels for the people that I was supposed to book hotels for to becoming a board member. It's been a journey.
Nice.
So yeah,
Congrats.
Thank you. That makes me feel old. I'm just board member, but I'm the youngest member of the board. But
no.
It's cool. It's cool to be part of something big and worldwide, international, in fact. But I love being part of that nonprofit. So I was there until 2019. And we didn't open this till 2021. So obviously I was there for almost 8 years working there.
I think that's really cool that you actually were doing something that you loved, had a job that you loved, and then still went after and did your passion and started your own business, because a lot of the times you hear this story, people will those entrepreneurial gurus will say, oh, you have to get to the point where, you hate what you do, you hate your life, and then you have to change it. And, that's what you have to get to that point, like the rock bottom moment or whatever. Yeah. And then that's where people like go and then chase their passion or whatever. And it's like not necessarily the case. Like you can start chasing your passion.
For sure.
For you, I think what really comes to mind is I think a lot of people stay stuck in like they have that dream of like one day owning the coffee shop or helping people in a certain way. Yeah. And they maybe never take those first steps because they don't feel they're ready. But you just started. You just started with your family, really wherever you could. And I think that is really a cool story for those maybe aspiring entrepreneurs out there to give some guidance.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the nonprofit gave me a lot of preparation to start my own. Like I remember I would count money and bring it to the bank. And I remember, all the mundane things like customer service, answering calls, answering like disgruntled customers, that was my least favorite, obviously. But, and then having events. And then like I'm a type of person who wants to make the most of the job that I have. So whether I used to work when I was like starting college, I didn't like that job, but I still learned something from it. But it was, my very first job was working for NCR, National Cash Registers. They're basically doing like, if you notice, grocery store registers that's made from that company, and even ATM machines. So we would like call out texts and stuff like that. So that was like my first job. And then after that, I just went to college and everything. But when I did this nonprofit job, like I always feel like you learn so much from every job that you are in that you have no idea how much that prepares you for whatever it is you have next, because I was just counting money for someone else and I have to count money for myself. Like had I not put my heart into counting money for someone else, maybe I may not be as excited to count money for myself. You know what I mean? Like it's all sometimes like you have this, it's a heart issue, it's a heart thing that in order for you to enjoy whatever, like you kind of have to see that life presents you those opportunities for you to learn.
Yeah, and at the time, at the time, you may not think that it's
I didn't have any idea. Yeah,
it's what it's preparing you for. That's something I love hearing about just anyone's story, but entrepreneur story, like all of those different skills and the experiences that were along the story, how all of it comes together beautifully, and you see the culmination of so many different. From your journey, just so many different aspects. We didn't even get into the travel aspect. The theme of this shop is Yonder. Yeah. And there's all of these really cool like travel books, like a van life book that I was reading that I loved reading, and that like makes me want to get a van and go and now I have a Tacoma. And I'm gonna get a camper on the back for sure because I want to hit all these national parks. And I'm like, that's definitely something that this shop like awakened in me.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Where did that start for you? Like, or how did you even come up with the whole Yonder theme? What's the story?
It's funny because before Yonder like existed, even with the mountain as part of the background and the name has nothing to do with my hobby, and I'm a hiker backpacker, so that's where the adventure kind of like theme comes from. But it wasn't necessarily connected initially with the coffee shop because Yonder was taken from a hymn that my grandma used to sing to me when I was a kid. And, I didn't remember Bellspresso was the original name. And I said, look, if I'm going to begin an actual coffee business, I don't want my name on it. Because once I die, like, I don't want people like, who the heck is Belle, But I wanted it to be more like a neutral name that doesn't have anybody's name. So I said, okay, what is it going to be? And then I remembered that song, and I said, oh, Yonder, that sounds like a cool name. So that's where I took it from. And it talks about like when the roll is called up yonder, and it's talking about like heaven, it's talking about like what's out there. And it says like when the roll is called up yonder, I'll be there. That's what the song is about, right? And the mountain kind of represents of like Mount Zion being heaven, whatever, right? Like it's a biblical reference. And so I said, oh, I'll keep a mountain in there and then call it Yonder. Yeah.
Love it.
And so that's where it's from. But that was obviously I would say this was like 2015, right? 2015. And I had started like something, I don't know what was happening in my life at that time, but I was very interested in hiking. And I already have been hiking before, but I didn't get serious till 2016. And I mean, like, seriously going for the peaks, going,
Wow.
you know, going for all the big ones, and at least locally, and then finally got like summit a bigger one, you know, highest in the lower 48 states, Mount Whitney. So that was
Wow.
a cool thing. And I had like a season where that's all I did, you know, and so Yonder and the mountain theme, like, it just kind of came together. And so when we started opening this, I said, look, we're going to have to incorporate it because that's really who we are. Like, we want to, at least for me, that's who I am. And you know, the people that we work with, even our coffee roaster, you know, he's a great, great friend of ours. And he's also a climber. Now he backpacks with us, you know, we go hiking, you know, do all kinds of like adventurous things. And
Nice.
I just need to surf now. I mean, he surfs and I don't, but you know,
Yeah.
something related
Surfing
to
is
being
tough.
outside. Yeah.
I just started snowboarding and I actually picked that up pretty quick. I don't know
Yeah.
have you ever snowboarded?
I hated it.
Really?
So I ski now.
Oh, okay.
I've learned how to ski.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
I want to
still-
ski
still
till
cool.
I'm like 90.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing,
Yeah.
right? Is you can't snowboard until you're 90. But no, that's awesome. Like,
Yeah.
I'm curious, what got you into traveling? I know you mentioned you weren't sure what was going on in your life. I feel like there's a story there.
Yeah. So with that, I think I was just like going through heartbreak, really. I was just like, I needed an outlet to, like, I didn't know that was happening. And I was just going for what's hard, like physically hard. And
Oh, wow.
I was like, you know, I in college I was very unfit. I mean, I don't consider myself as like the most fit person, but like I can hike.
Pretty fit.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
hike, and I can, like, at least now, you know. But at that time, like, I just wanted to get out there, and there was this element of solace that I was looking for, being outside in the wilderness. And so I would go to places locally, at least, where there's no service and like no one can bug me or anything. So every time on my day off back then, when I was still in the nonprofit, I'd go out and like go with my friend, and we'll just drive out to the mountains, and we'll stay out there basically the whole day and just walk and walk and walk. And we get to the top, we eat, we have fun, enjoy. No headphones, nothing. It's just pure solace. And that's where I kind of process things. And I really love that season, you know, being able to go out there that many times in a year. You know, that was awesome. And then it just kind of built on to this love for like long distance hiking, which I still, part of me, you know, once everything is settled here, that's still like one of my dreams, is to at least like hike something like the John Muir Trail, you know, or like portion of the Pacific Crest Trail, since we're here in the Pacific, you know, side. And so things like that, where I love the backpacking aspect of, you know, being outside and not having access to things and having everything in your backpack. And, you know, partly why when we first opened here, it's like, look, I don't want anything that's clutter. Like, I don't want, if you don't need it, toss it out, you know, like I like minimalist mindset, but also not to the extreme of like minimalism where you have nothing.
Yeah, no, it's like just the right amount.
Just
in the
what
right
you need,
places,
really.
what's
And
needed
and that's basically like a principle that I've taken for myself when we're going backpacking. Anything you don't need, don't bring it. Like the first time I backpacked for an overnight backpacking trip, I had like 40 pounds of weight in my bag, you know, and I'm like, unnecessary. But, you know, yeah, I think I learned a lot about like shedding the weight of unnecessary things. And so I like to incorporate that here, which I feel like it needs to be more of a regular thing, because as we grow, there's all these things. I'm just like, what is this? What is that? Like, you know, people start bringing stuff, and I'm like,
yeah.
what are these things? Like, our cost of goods are, you know, it's growing. So I'm like, where can we put these boxes? Like, there's no more room, you know, and we want to minimalize. But sometimes there's just, it comes with growth, right? It comes with a challenge of growth. But yeah, I forgot what the original question was.
We're just riffing.
Oh yeah, the part of being outside.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. No,
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, so with my production company Brand Story, like it's all about the story, right? The narrative.
Sure.
Like that's something I feel like here, I think that's what attracted me was coming to this shop. I could really tell that you had honed in on your brand story. I'm curious, like, did you take branding workshops, or was this something that just like came together like intuitively for you?
Honestly, I did not take any business classes.
Wow.
Nothing. Like I'm just like,
that's-
I attribute that to the Lord because
That's very
just-
impressive.
yeah, I mean, I have an eye for design. If I wasn't a musician, I would be a designer. But I took a different route. So I think I have that part of me where I have just like, how do you call it? Like just as an amateur, right? Like making designs and like creating things, you know? And I like that aspect of like branding. I really, like I knew that at least like for branding that needs to be consistency. And if there was one thing, I just needed it to be that. Like if I can keep it that way, then great.
All the, because like this, like, yeah, like I would say aesthetically,
Sure.
crushing it. But I feel like what a lot of brands are missing is, and just entrepreneurs, like when they're first getting started, is the narrative. It can be sometimes all over the place. Like they're not quite sure. There's not like one clear, cohesive narrative for the customers to like really have like an experience that gives them a beginning, middle, end. There's a theme, right? So that's where you guys crushed it, and it's really cool to hear that like you just intuitively just also are a great storyteller, because there's a story here in the shop.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Honestly, like hearing it from another person outside from like my brain, I feel like it's very affirming.
Yeah.
Like we have reached this, like we've reached this. What's the word? I'm
Ready to
looking for?
franchise.
Like we've reached something that
Yeah.
we can say someone gets it. Like this
Oh,
is
yeah.
what we are going for.
Yeah.
And it's honestly because it's not quote planned. I feel like this is where I kind of like draw the principle behind it is like who you are as a person. If you are true to that, it kind of just radiates to your whatever you're doing. So like with this, I mean, I don't have to come up with anything because this is what I do. Camp mugs, that's what I use when I'm out there.
And what's
know?
crazy is that a lot of the time, you know, our clients that we work with, this is something that this is something that they hire us for. I would say that you guys wouldn't need to hire us because you guys, that's one thing I think that sometimes in business and entrepreneurship, it can be tough out there because there's so many like tactics, and there's like these business coaches and gurus who are telling you all these different things, and it gets kind of confusing, and it's like, what's our North Star?
Yeah.
And it always comes back to like, who are you?
good.
Who are you inside? What's, you know, like, what's really the brand story is like, it's like not even about a brand. It's like you are your brand is the way I look at it.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's awesome.
It comes out from within you.
Yeah.
And so that's really cool that you pulled from that well, which really, I mean, when you get really clear on that, on who you are, your why, like why you're in it, what your passions are, you can just pull from that infinitely and like create such cool stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think that's, you know, I feel like that's one of those things where you kind of have to look inward, you know, when it comes to that. And for any entrepreneur, like I have many more dreams. Like it's not just a coffee shop. Like I feel like Yonder Coffee, the word yonder is just like maybe like a parent brand of more to come. And I feel like it's not just coffee. It's other things that I've also been desiring ever since, you know? And I think part of that is just finding that inside. Because like knowing your true self is like, what is your true self, right? Like people always ask that question. And I feel like even for me, I'm still not looking, but like I feel like I'm starting to find my true self.
There's always more to discover.
There's more, yeah. And part of that is because there's just so many influences around you. Like people have expectations of you that you think like, oh, is that my true self? You know, you don't start to really think that because you are trying to please this person, you're trying to please this thing, and you're trying to please the demographic that you're serving. It's like, okay, but what and who are we? Like we need to constantly go back to that, because I don't know if I mentioned this to you in our previous conversations, but you know, coffee shops will open up around us, and there's a new coffee shop that just opened up maybe a couple months ago, And some of our staff were kind of like, oh my gosh, like a new coffee shop just came up and what are we gonna do? You know, like we need to be better. Like all of a sudden, like eyes open to stuff that they never saw before. And part of that is like, look, we need to change this, we need to change that. And you know, kind of like having the heart for, we don't want to lose customers here. You know, I mean, it's great. It's coming from a heart of like care, and I understand that. But I also see the other side of it was like panic and fear.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, look, they're gonna take our customers because they look aesthetically pleasing. Their drinks looks amazing and all that stuff. And we've tried it, and I gotta say, it's good. You know, it's one of those things where it's like, wow, like I would come here if I want to. You know, and again, like in the coffee community, there is this whole thing called like community over competition. So I don't like, yes, technically in the aspect of business, it is still a competition, but in essence, it's kind of like having a sibling. You know, you don't look alike, but you're related, right?
Yeah,
like you do different things. And what I see is like, I could be afraid and say like, look, I'm gonna start changing the way I post on social media. I'm gonna start to see, you know, what people like and stuff like that. But then it kind of draws away from like, who are we? Like you gotta focus on what you're already good at.
Yes.
And so I had to go back and had a conversation. You know, I'm like, all right, guys, let's have a little powwow right now. You know, so I just like kind of told them that if at every time a coffee shop opens in your neighborhood, and if you're gonna act like this, you're gonna lose business because you're always gonna be panicky and changing things around. You gotta remember, what are you already good at? What are people coming here for?
Yeah.
People come most of the time for relationships. People stay like even and hospitality, right? Like, and of course you got to keep up your quality. And honestly, like having another coffee shop open up gives me like a reality check. Like, where have we been slacking?
Yeah.
You know, where have we been slacking? We need to improve. Yeah. And it's a learning experience, but still boils down to knowing your true self, like knowing who that is and what that is, and if it takes a while to figure out, like that's fine. Like you can keep figuring it out until you get to that point that you're comfortable of that self that you are seeing, whether in yourself or in your brand or in your business.
Yeah, it's definitely a give or take when it comes to like, you know, the customer's always right. And
yes,
you know, I mean, why are they coming here in the first place? It's because of who we are.
Right.
And you know, I love that your perspective on that, because it's I would say you can fall into the trap of either people pleasing too much. On the other end, you can fall into the trap of becoming too in your own kind of in your own head and not listening to the customer at all. So I feel like there's really a balance there that you guys have nailed. And so it's like, who cares what other coffee shops? I don't know which one you're talking about, but I've been to a few of the other ones around here, and I always end up coming back here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we went and tried one once just because you guys were closed. That was the only reason why you guys were closed. We were like, oh, we gotta go. Yeah, it was Sunday. Exactly. And it was okay. You know, aesthetics, sure.
Yeah, sure.
But it's the people. And it really, that's something that I'm like very adamant with my clients and just with our values. It's all about the people with the story. Stories are about people. Yeah. You know, totally. And it's like, it comes down to what are your values here, and then again the theme, the interests, you know, all of the travel and just everything that you've curated together is going to, because it's coming from really like who you are and your truth, you're able to attract others who are genuinely interested in those similar things. Yeah. And that's, I think, what creates such meaningful connection. Yeah, is when a brand is being true to themselves, and then they are going to attract the authentic, aligned customers, versus a brand who's maybe trying to look aesthetic, but they're not being true to themselves. Yeah, sure. There's probably not going to be as strong of a connection there with the customers. So
yeah, that's true. I think part of that too is like, I remember, so like this year I started. I have like a business coach that I'm working with, and more so, honestly, like hers is not like how to build your business or whatever, although it is, but it's a lot more towards time management. And part of the reason why I became part of her group is because I'm like, I need help. Like I need help in like managing my time, and also just it became a lot. Like it became at some point, like maybe sometime last year, I'm just like running like on fumes because it's so stressful.
Yeah, burnout's real when it comes to
Yeah.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah,
the
it
struggle.
was really, yeah, I was getting burned out. Literally, like I wouldn't even want to get up. Like to a point that you get to that from like, oh my gosh, let's open a coffee shop. Like it's such a big, you know, difference when it comes to that. But the day to day would really run you down, you know? So anyway, one of the things that she always talks about is like, which I appreciate, is like finding your best client, right? Like finding that person.
Like the dream client that's like a pleasure to work
Yeah,
with.
and part of it is more of like, at least from what I've learned from her, is to understand like what are they looking for, and to be very specific about it. You know, like to be almost like going into like us, like here, if you notice, like all the themes have been kind of going together, you know, like this I mean, people talk about, you know, I go on Yelp and be like, oh, it's so peaceful. I'm like, okay, peace is a good word. You know, like that's the word I
Very
would
calming,
like, you
yeah,
know, exactly.
100%.
Like I want to have that. All this other stuff that we have here, like the greenery that we have, like those are part of what we want, like not just as like aesthetics, but yes, like those are obviously aesthetically pleasing, but as part of, I don't know, like being connected to people. And then you really find that quote unquote best client, like the right person that belongs in there. You know, like they love coffee, they want good coffee. Some people like sweets, which is like crazy because people love sweet stuff. But still like have the other aspect of it. I don't know. I feel like I was going down the rabbit hole, but
No, it's okay. I something popped into my head I wanted to ask you, which is like at the end, you know, you really understand. It's clear you really understand your target, like your dream client, and so everything is curated really to like speak to them, and also you're speaking from the heart, right? I'm curious. There's like clearly a care and a love for community that you have. Where do you feel like that comes from? Where do you feel like your desire to build community, like really that I see as your why, like why you're so passionate about this shop?
well, I mean, just as a human point of view, like no one lives on their own, you know, like it's really, I would say we don't thrive on our own. Like if a coal was separated away from a bunch of coals, like it'll eventually die out. So I think like with community, it's how people live. Like you don't live alone. Like it's just like, yes, you could be alone. Like, and there are days like I love my alone time, you know, but it's in community that we grow together. It's in community that we find our purpose. It's in community that we can speak life to each other. And it's in community, like you can do that on your own, but for how long? You know, I don't think that we were meant to be alone, right? And I mean, I'm Christian, so I draw that from like when God created like Adam and Eve. It's like it's not good for man to be alone, right? Like that's literally what he said. So I'm just like, hey, he knew that we needed someone, like not just talking about like a spouse or anything, but just community. Yeah, you know, having like this community of people. And I feel like people, that's what the world can't offer us if we don't do it ourselves. Like it's the world itself will just not do it. You know, you have to build that community, and like people attract people. And really, like I said, like in the beginning, I wouldn't have known you had it not been for community. You know, if we weren't like having this give and if without the give and take of relationships with people, we would not be able to build that community, you know? And so like it's awesome. Like it's really cool. Like we've worked with so many people here that were just strangers before, and now they offer like services and like really friends and like you know, so it's just awesome.
Well, I think that's the beauty of small business, the difference between like corporate business that you're not going to get at like a corporation where it feels very transactional.
Yes.
And transactions can, like the essence of a customer relationship with a business, when it's a small business, it's not just a transaction. It's like we're supporting and getting to know each other, and like you're supporting. It's like the exchange of currency is really just, to me, it just doesn't, it's just not the same thing as like a corporate exchange. It's just totally different, you know? And I think something that I saw since I was a kid was like this mega rise of corporations and then like the, you know, Starbuckses and all of these different places popping up, taking over small business, like taking over small businesses territory, out marketing them and all of this with all their money.
Sure.
But like ultimately now looking at it, you know, where we are in 2024, it's like we're coming full circle. I feel like, I think, especially with my generation, it's like we're missing a lot of what I think back in before corporate interests, just before corporations took over. There was a lot of, I think, community that got taken away. And when I look at now my generation, I feel kind of like heartbroken of just how much has been taken specifically in the community sense of just looking at, you know, not to go on a tangent, but I'm curious what you feel about that. Like what you feel about the state of things. When it comes to, I mean, after the pandemic, but ultimately like now it's with technology and everything, like, I don't know. I think there is definitely something to that aspect of having a third place. That I feel like a lot of people don't have that, and maybe that could be contributing to some problems.
Oh yeah, I think funny because, you know, when I was doing the hiring process, right? Like when we started off, it was a bunch of friends that we hired, and we all started kind of together, and then I said, look, like I'm not looking for partners, for business partners. Like I was directly opposed to that. Like anyone who had money and be like, hey, do you want to be like, you know, you want to help out and do things like that? I'm just like, nope, not looking for a partner. I didn't want to get into the trouble of like financial rifts, like in the the near future. I've heard too many stories of like partnerships where I'm just like, I'd rather not go there. If it can be done by one person, like, fine.
Same boat.
Yeah.
I'm very adamant about just
unless it's like a husband and wife, that's fine, right? But like if it's someone else, like not to say like, okay, if it works for you, great, but like for the most part for me, like I just personally prefer to not have had that, right? So I still don't, you know, I don't have any partners or anything like that, but I did have investors. I have people that have invested financially into the business, but it's more of like a loan, you know, it's not like they get percentages,
like ownership.
Yeah, there's no ownership whatsoever. So
that's good.
All that to say, we started off with friends and family, really. And I said, all right, I'm going to pay you guys, you know, because this is a business, so I'm going to pay you. So we started off with that. But once everyone was kind of not aging out, but like everyone was looking for other, I mean, really, barista is like, if you think about it, it is a very entry-level position. So a lot of college students really like that job, and I think that there's a lot more to it than that. Specialty coffee especially has a lot more positions to fill. When, you know, if you want to work in coffee, there's so many open things that you can do, not just being a barista, but that is a good entry point. That's a good start. So when we started hiring people, this is what I was going to say. When we started hiring people, I would get a lot of college students, and these are college students that are born out of COVID, that graduated in the middle of COVID and have started college in the middle of COVID. And so at least 3 of them have said, I said, why do you want to work here? And the answer was, I want to have better social skills. I want to have better interpersonal skills. And I'm like, that's very interesting. It's, for me, like maybe back in the day, I would be like, I would not say that because I should be coming here and bringing my A game to say, look, I can do that. You know, but for them, it's like, I'm here because I want to grow in that area. And I, you know, looking back now, I'm thinking, gosh, they were so honest to say, I don't have that skill right now, but I would like to learn.
That's awesome.
So they were coming in with this like open hand to say, look, I want to learn to be better in communicating with people and like interacting with people, you know? And I think some of them have gone a long way. And so I think that when it comes to this generation, with the state of things, you know, from COVID and things like that, I feel like we are coming into a whole new world. Like it's a different world of where it used to be. Like post-COVID, like entrepreneurship post-COVID is so different from prior, right? Like now social media is on the rise. Like it's crazy. Like these are stuff that I didn't grow up with. You know what I mean? Like I grew up with like rotary telephones. Like it's crazy that like that stuff is ancient now. It's like literally like you find in thrift stores or whatever. So I think with that there is an element of that's missing that I'm seeing when it comes to like Gen Zers. And there's nothing wrong. My daughter is a Gen Zer, so I know that there are things that she's growing up into that I never grew up into, that I'm also learning how to navigate through that. But there is an element of community that I see is lacking, because in the time that they were about to step out of the house to go to college or to start living their life outside of like K through 12, they did not have that opportunity right away. It was kind of robbed from them.
Stunted.
They were stunted, and we almost like lost 3 years of, you know what I mean? So like we lost that 3 years, and because of that, they also lost that part of their lives, you know, whether we like it or not, that's what happened.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where I see that now they're seeing all these things. I don't know, like I'm seeing like different groups pop up, you know, as simple as like people meeting up for like pickleballs, pickleball tournaments and things like that.
Yeah, I feel like we reprioritized, which was a positive that came out of it.
Yeah.
It was like really realizing just how much lacking that social and that community
For sure.
could just, like negatively affect mental health.
And
you know?
and exactly, like that's, I think if anything, that the lack of community have affected a lot of young people mentally speaking, and so that's why, you know, there's a rise in all these things. And even if I think about like people who love to play games, right, like video games, and there's a community there, like they talk and they do all the, right, like so I've never done it, but like I know people who do that.
That's how I stay connected with my cousin who moved
exactly.
We hang out every week because of that, you know?
So that's a community. So it's definitely something that I think, if you can translate that into reality when it comes to, I mean, like, that's reality, but I'm talking about, like, real life in person, like this. Then that you kind of, like, go into another level of community. Because there is an online community, and I love that. I remember having, like, Facebook groups, like, of a book club that I was in, and all of a sudden people started meeting up, and I'm like, oh, my gosh, like, you're real people, like, you know? And all of a sudden we became a community, and literally some of them have become, like, really close friends of mine. And just because of that, and that's something that, you know, sometimes is lacking these days because people are afraid. People are afraid to kind of see people in person. But yeah, community is huge.
You know, I know you mentioned that you had like a little bit of heartbreak right around the time you started traveling. I'm curious because, I mean, if you think of heartbreak, that's like the exact opposite, right, of community. It's like so I'm curious if there was any other elements of your own personal story, like if you could track back like the plot points to really, I'm always really curious and digging into the why. Like, and I feel like there's so many layers to someone's why. It could be like, you know, there's like the philosophical layer, which we kind of talked about, which is like that, the like morals of community to like Christian beliefs. But then I always feel like there's a deeper layer there, which is like where in your own life do you feel like community became so important, you know? And I know that from my experience, brand story really is ultimately, it is also about community. It's like, how do we create messages and tell business stories in a way that brings together the right community for those business owners? And I know for me, and it may not be like that for you, but for me, I think what I realized was that the more I dug into my why, it came from adversities in my past, you know, and my family not really feeling understood by our community at the time. You know, I had a little brother who was severely autistic. So growing up, it was like, well, there was a lot of stigma. People didn't understand autism. There was a lot of judgmental like stuff that we had to deal with, and just not being understood. And I think that was for me. I think that was a big driving factor. So I'm just curious, you know, if maybe there was any. You know, we don't have to get too personal.
I mean, but I'm an open book, so I'm not.
Okay, and perfect.
I feel like, I mean, it's just making me think. I never thought about that question before. Peeling back a little bit more, right? And I think, as you're talking, what came to my mind was, it could be like a buried thing of, like. So when I was growing up. Let me just kind of go back a little bit here. Like when I was growing up, I was in a relationship with my daughter's dad, and we were together for about 6 years. And then I got pregnant when I was 19. So from there, I feel like that relationship was in today's vernacular, it was very toxic, right? Like it's a toxic relationship. And so I'm essentially, thank God that was over, but also like it could have been worse, you know? But I feel like in that relationship was very foundational because, you know, you're 14 years old, you start dating, and it's like, it wasn't just like, oh, a little fling here and there. It was like a serious relationship. And so, I think having within those 6 years, I felt like there was a part of me that was repressed, and not so much because I didn't know that or I didn't know that I was repressing it, but rather I was so more into his life and, you know, like putting him up on a pedestal that I no longer had a voice for who I was, right? Like I had dreams too, you know, like I have things like I want to be part of stuff, but like I kind of put those things aside because I was focused on like what he wants, right? And I mean, at a young age, you're just like, dude, what the heck? Like you should have known that. But I'm like, who knows that when you're that young? Nobody knows that.
Also, I mean, just so many societal constructs and just like programming we don't even realize. Also, with being a woman, that there's all of the societal just like constructs to that, and like what it means to, you know, to be a woman in a relationship. And how that could young girls from Hollywood and from all these different depictions of what the proper family is, right? Like the husband is the breadwinner, and then the woman is like the subservient wife, like those types of like stigmas and like narratives. Really, it's like stories that were told to us,
without us knowing,
and giving us these. So it's totally understandable. I feel like probably a lot of women would relate. Looking back, like I've been working with mostly women clients, and there's a very reoccurring theme of feeling like, there was this suppressed voice that they broke out of. And the result was like really just, I think, very inspiring. Very inspiring story of like finding yourself and finding your voice. So that's cool to hear that you haven't heard of that, or you hadn't thought of that.
I didn't think about it because I'm just like, okay, where does it begin? You know, when it comes to like finding your true self and stuff. And I think part of that is just not even just then, but like I only think about that because that was like maybe the first initial memory I have when it comes to not being myself. You know what I mean? Like not actually going for what I want rather than like pleasing somebody, right? And
kind of losing yourself a little in the process.
Oh, for sure, but without you knowing it. That's the thing. Yeah. And so like for me, that was definitely something that was there, but looking back, you know, as I grew older and everything, like that became kind of like behind me, and I just don't think about it. You know, that was something that like maybe was just part of me. It could be like I want to be accepted, you know, like maybe he'll leave me if I don't like grant his wishes or whatever, right? And there's that aspect of that in us, of like this people pleasing aspect of, and that's for me, that's a huge thing. Like could say I'm a people pleaser, you know, and part of that is maybe I don't want people leaving me, that they don't want to be my friend anymore if I don't no longer serve them, right? Like there is that like degree of it, but as it
just resonates so much with this. Everything you're saying is like, that is everything that I went through as well. Like through high school, feeling like for me, it was a different situation where like I like physically couldn't be myself because I had taken an antibiotic that like robbed me of my mental health.
Wow.
And so I lost a lot of connections and really just kind of fell to my own. I really just became like a hermit.
Wow.
My senior year of high school, like in the library by myself, all of senior year. And
crazy.
But it comes back to like that fear of like it's like oh my gosh, getting deep.
Hey, it's okay.
Yeah, but it's just crazy how, you know, a few months ago had been going to the shop but hadn't met you, and now it's like all of a sudden I'm like, whoa.
Now you're telling me about
I
your
relate
high
to you
school
so much.
hermit days.
But I relate to you so much because it really does. It's like,
Yeah.
although our stories are different,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much at the same time. There's like that we went through that. It's like I see so much so much commonality, which is
Yeah, that's awesome.
the beauty of I think story,
Yeah.
and the beauty of getting to know other people's story
Yeah,
is totally different backgrounds,
For
totally different
sure.
stories, yet like so much of the same struggle,
yeah.
in different ways. But,
Almost like same plot, different characters.
whoa,
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
And I just, I'm writing a book.
I remember. Yeah.
And it's called Omni, but it's cool because I kind of have this very similar approach to how you have with Yonder, wanting to do like a brand. And with me, it's like the overarching theme is about the community, and specifically the you mentioned like same character, different plot, and
Same plot, different
or
characters.
same plot, different characters.
Yeah.
And I'm honestly, I'm a little just like mind fucked right now because like, we got into like some, so I'm trying to pull it back to a through line. Maybe we can end off on a positive note. And I think if there is maybe to any young aspiring entrepreneurs who are kind of lost, right? Like, I'm curious, what would your word of advice be as a now successful business owner?
Thank you. That's weird to even hear. It's just like we're
It's
only here 3 years, but okay.
You guys are always busy.
We are.
You're doing pretty well.
We have been.
Yeah, you got to be doing pretty well.
After I did my taxes today, I'm just like, I don't know if I'm doing really well.
Taxes, oh God.
Oh man, it's funny. But I think, gosh, if I could speak to my younger self, maybe that's how I would kind of frame this, right? And if I could speak to the young Belle, I would think about, like, I think take a moment to be in solitude by yourself, maybe with a journal, or something where you could sit down and ask questions about what do I really see myself doing, right? Like how do I want to make a difference, like in my own world, And I think if you can answer that for yourself, I think that you can start to figure out like where you're going to be heading first and foremost. And it's not like a lot of these things are answerable by yourself. Like there are many things, like I always tell people, it's like sometimes you keep asking people what the answers are for things that you yourself can only answer. Right? Like it's gonna be just you, but a lot of people, one of the things that's been lost in this generation is the art of reflection. And I've seen that, like, even for myself, like back in the day, I act like I'm that old. I'm not that old, but like when I was in college, I had times between classes where I'm just reflecting. I'm just writing down ideas.
There was no phone, no
I
distractions.
had a phone, but it was like a flip phone.
But no like 10 apps to flip through and
Correct.
constantly keep ourselves distracted.
Yeah. So at the time, like I missed these moments because I have just a notebook, whatever notebook I had. I would just write down every idea I have, anything, like what I'm even from sketch. Like literally, this notebook has like everything. Like there's no rhyme or reason for that notebook, and it's just I call it my ideas notebook. Whatever comes to my mind, I'll just write it down, and I don't even know where those things are now, but. Just having moments of reflection all the time, bouncing back and forth with my journal, and of course talking with people. But if I were to tell that person, like, if you can find that time to do that and have more moments of reflection in yourself, as a young entrepreneur, I think it's so important to be connected first and foremost to yourself. And that's not just like this, motivational thing, like find yourself or whatever, but like literally find it. Because if you don't, like you're going to keep doing things like everyone else. There's only one you. And I think that we're all created to be a person of our own selves, and we all bring something to the table. Like might be similar. We may have similar stories, but like you only bring what Evan can bring. I could only bring what Belle can bring. So no one else can do that. So why not be you? Why not be original?
Yeah.
But then it kind of you need to find that sometimes because we're so surrounded by different influences that make you think like, oh, I should be that. I should do that kind of coffee shop. I should do this thing. But it's like, you already have it in you. You want a unique brand? Find it in yourself because you're the unique brand, right? Like you're the unique brand. Like you have it in you and you need to dig it out, right? Like it's a well of information down there. But unless you get a bucket of your journal and start writing down, pick up, peel the layers like what we were talking about earlier, like you're going to like basically just thank yourself maybe 10, 15 years down the line. And it may not feel like it's a lot at the moment. It's going to be hard though, right? Like nothing good comes easy, really. Like anything that's valuable will be difficult to start with.
I have one more question.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, you're cool.
Okay.
Yeah, you're cool. I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah.
No. I do feel like it just popped up, but I thought before we wrap things up, I also feel like there's one big thing I could learn from you.
Sure.
Which is, how do you go about hiring? How do you go about making sure, or like, I guess, let me rephrase this question.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, what you look for when building your team.
Ooh, yeah. So I have So we have a process that I've learned from one of our coffee roasters. They have like 3 shops, and I said, hey, how do you guys go about this? I've never done this before. I don't have any manual or anything like that. So first thing, it's a 3-step process. Like, so 1, I call them, right? And I phone them and see how they do on the phone. And if all things work out, like schedule-wise or whatever, then they move on to the next part of it, which is me talking to them in person. And then I talk to them how they are, right? Like, I ask them all the questions, and then the last thing is I bring in a couple of like team members to interview them also. That's the last step, and then I call references. So that's my process, right? I call if their references are checking off, like cool, then if all things work out, we send the offer. Are
there any particular particular parallels that you really look for in them, though?
Yeah, so this is kind of where I was going after that, is that's the process. But as we've gone through it over the past 3 years, I'm starting to hone down what I'm really looking for. So I didn't know that in the beginning. I just need willing hearts to come and help serve coffee. That's kind of like all I had in mind. But as we are growing and having these things, like number one, if I was to hire someone tomorrow, I would definitely look for someone who loves coffee. I would also look for someone who cares about coffee. I would also look for someone who has like an integrous mindset, who has like, I always ask them like, how do you clean at home? How do you keep your room organized? Like as simple as that, right? Because that tells me about that person. And not to say there's no room for growth, but I'm paying you to be here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to pay someone who's not going to be competent to at least organize my merch, Right. So it could be as simple as that. But I think again, if I hire someone tomorrow, one of the things that I would change is like, I need you to be a coffee drinker. I need you someone who loves coffee, and I need you to also basically like have the character for being a part of the team. Because that's dynamic is really hard. And I've had over the years, like I've had issues with like people's personalities, and like, while that's cool and all, like you can't just I wouldn't be just biased on one type of personality. I've literally hired every personality I feel like I could find here in our team. Like, we've all been so different. But as we grow, we're also seeing that there is a pattern of certain type of people that like to work here. And I think we have very little turnover, which I am really glad for that, because they all love to be here, and I love that part about them. But it's like, all right, guys, like, we're done now. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's cool. But there is also like, sometimes I'll just have people go or whatever. But yeah, like, I think having the integrity part, character is huge, because those are stuff that, you can't really train someone to have good character. I think that's something that you need to have already.
True.
Not to say like, I'm not ever going to hire someone who has like all these backgrounds in the past, but I'm going to need you to be on probation and really show forth. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Last question would be, what's next? What's next
What's next for Yonder?
What's next for you?
Oh, for me.
You have a lot of dreams, and and Yonder's a part of that. But yeah, I'm curious. Like, are you looking to franchise or like totally different?
Business wise, well, the next thing is I need to go back and kind of grow our catering business, catering side. So that's where we started our coffee cart. So I need to pour some time doing that. We have like events coming up, that
Nice.
we've worked with, pretty high volume events, and we want to keep that relationship, but also like grow that relationship, but still continue in our catering, because I believe that there is value in that bringing in here. So that's like immediate next would be that. But long term, like obviously we want to have more coffee shops. Like I want to not to like, going back to the whole like idea of corporate, like I don't think there's anything wrong with corporate, but the only thing is that if you lose the touch of community, then that's where I feel like I need to stop there, because then I am just doing this for transaction purposes, which is defeating the purpose of why I opened it. So I don't want to, if it ever gets to that point, then now I'm just all about the money, like now it's like, now you lose the real story brand, right? Because now you are just all about how it can bring you, as opposed to how can we serve you, right? Like it's a two-way street, but because we need your money to grow us and serve you, because how are we going to run if we don't have any, So you kind of have that, but I feel like that would be my threshold, I guess. Like when it comes to a point, like let's just say I have 20 shops and then I lose the idea of community, then it kind of really defeats the purpose of it. So maybe I won't. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think that's a really good guiding factor, and like just a good guiding, I guess, principle would be honestly for every business. Yeah, is like it all comes back to community.
Sure.
And so.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Of course.
Thank you for being on Story Driven.
Thank you.
I've got a little coffee left.
Cheers.
Cheers to Yonder. If you haven't been to Yonder, located in Northridge.
Yeah.
Let me be honest. This shop is the only thing keeping me personally from leaving this area.
Wow.
Because initially I wanted to move to Sherman Oaks. And then we ended up getting
coffee shops there too.
Yeah, but we ended up, getting a great spot here in Northridge. So the way I was like, oh, okay, that's just gonna be temporary, and so our lease just ended, so we could leave anytime. And I'm like, hey, babe, like, should we stay? And she's like, I like it around here. I like Yonder. Like we both just love Yonder.
Aw,
so
thank you guys.
I think we might stick around.
Yes, thank you. It's a good reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
But thank you so much.
Thanks again, Belle.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that's episode 6 of the Story Driven podcast. Thanks for tuning in. As always, if you haven't yet, please hit that like button, comment any feedback, and please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. I'm really looking forward to continuing on this journey to interview more entrepreneurs, passion-driven, story-driven individuals who have stories to tell, value to share with the world. And so it's been a pleasure getting this podcast off the ground. Really, truly, I'm grateful for every single one of you who has been tuning in. Hope you keep tuning in. I hope to see you next week. And until next time, make sure that you follow Yonder if you haven't. I'll go ahead and link Yonder as well as Belle's IGs and social media accounts in the description. Also, be sure to come check out Yonder here in Northridge. This cafe is extremely special. So, see you next time.